Good day, students. I am again Engineer Maurice Aquino, your instructor in Engineering Economics. Okay, so last meeting we discussed about our lesson 1, which is all about the principles of engineering economics. There we discussed about the different economic resources. We define the engineering economics, economy, engineering, we define all of those. And we design they call this the process of we touch about the process of decision making or in choosing alternatives. Okay, now this meeting on in our we will be talking about our lesson 2, which will be about the cost concept for decision making. So if last meeting we talked about the what do you call this the different processes or the methods in decision making. This time we're gonna talk about the cost concept or how different costs affects our decision making. Okay, the first is types of efficiency. So in a certain business or in economy, efficiency is very important because it's said that efficiency of a system is generally defined as the ratio of its output to input. The efficiency can be classified into technical efficiency and economic efficiency. Okay, again, so we have two efficiencies. We have the technical and economic. So it is the ratio of output compared to the input. So technically, if we're gonna have a business or we're gonna invest into something, we want our input or our investments or the capital to be used well. So we want a better output wherein we would get what we have or we can get more than what we invest. Next, the technical efficiency. Okay, so next is it is the ratio of output of a physical system. So this is more of physical. Kaya tinawag na technical. The physical system may be an example of this is a diesel engine, a machine working in a shop floor, a furnace, etc. So the formula of technical efficiency is output divided by uh, input times 100. The technical efficiency of a diesel example is heat equivalence of mechanical energy produced divided by heat equivalence of fuel used times 100%. So in this, for example, in the given example, we compute how efficient is the engine. Okay, for example, we put a specific a gasoline. Okay, for example, wherein there's a given equivalent of fuel. Let's say one gasoline should last for about 10 kilometers, for example. So if the engine that you have has met lower or much lower than 10 kilometers on a liter, it means that the efficiency of the machine is lower because it is tested that certain amount of the diesel or the fuel will reach a certain distance. Okay, in practice, technical efficiency can never be more than 100%. This is mainly due to frictional loss and incomplete combustion fuel, which are considered to be unavoidable phenomena in working of a diesel engine. So, okay, so it is said that when it comes to technical efficiency, we will never reach an efficiency above 100%. Why? Because there are a lot of external factors that would affect the the general output. But um, as much as possible, we will choose the efficiency that has the nearest or the highest efficiency, which is nearest to 100%. That's for the technical efficiency. Okay. Next is the economic efficiency. Economic efficiency is the ratio of output to input of business system. So the technical efficiency is all about it's like the physical system or the physical part, while on economic it's all about business. So the formula is output divided by input times 100, which is equal to worth divided by cost times 100, wherein worth is the annual revenue generated by way of operating the business, and cost is the total annual expenses incurred in carrying out the businesses. For the survival and growth of any business, the economic efficiency should be more than 100%. Okay, so when it comes to business, the word here is like in our in Tagalog or in Filipino, it's called the kita or the sales, yung nabenta mo. Okay, so the cost also is the capital or yung puhunan. Okay, so when it comes to business, the main goal is to have a sales greater than your initial expense or your capital, di ba? So kung gusto mo, nag-invest ka ng 100 pesos, makukuha mo is mas mataas sa 100 pesos. So when it comes to economic efficiency or when it comes to business, the efficiency must always be above 100%. 'Di ba? Kasi ganun yung concept ng business. Kailangan tumutubo tayo or meron tayong income dumadagdag. Unlike sa technical efficiency, what do you call this? It's like technical efficiency more on sa ano siya, mga physical objects. So wherein yung physical objects naman marami namang external factors na kaya medyo bumababa yung efficiency or hindi natin may reach yung above efficiencies or above 100%. Okay? Need to proceed. Okay. Economic efficiency is also called productivity. There are several ways of improving productivity. Okay, ito yung mga mahalagang concepts. Okay, increase output for the same input. So, para mas mataas daw yung productivity or yung efficiency ng isang business, ito yung mga dapat gawin. Number 2, decrease input for the same output. By a proportionate increase in output which is more than the proportionate increase in inputs. By a proportionate decrease in input which is more than the proportionate decrease in output. Through simultaneous increase in output with a decrease in input. Okay, so isa-isahin na natin. Increased output for the same input. In this strategy, the output is increased while keeping the input constant. Let us assume that the steel plant, the layout of the existing facilities is not proper. By slightly altering the location of the belay making section and bring it closer to the furnace, which produce hot metal, the scale formation at the top of the ladles will be considerably reduced. Okay, so let us not, I will give you another example. Okay, so when it comes to the economic increase in output with the same input, para mas tumaas yung ano natin, yung efficiency or productivity, kailangan natin gumawa ng tawag dito. Isa tong concept is we need to increase the output with the same input. For example, meron kang wood. Okay? Sa wood mo, gumagawa ka ng let's say mga blocks. Okay? So, yung isang puno, ginagawa mo siyang um, let's say yung mga wood na kailangan natin sa construction, like for example, yung tinatawag nating 2x2, mga ganon. So instead of adding some what do you call this, to be able to increase our output, we should measure or kailangan nating sukatin yung, for example, yung puno, yung buong puno, para yung cut natin is maging precise at walang masayang na what do you call this, na resources. Kasi doon natin mas maximize yung output natin without adding any input. Okay, so another is what do you call this? Ano pa ba yung mga pwede nating example? Um, Basta yan. Ay, nawala na ako ng ibang example. So, that's the best concept about it. To increase the productivity, we should redesign or reanalyze our procedure para kung may makita tayong ibang way na makakapagpadami ng output, is proceed tayo doon. Okay? Next is the decreased input for the same output. Okay, so medyo reverse siya nung nauna. In this strategy, the input is decreased to produce the same output. Let us assume that there exists a substitute raw material to manufacture a product and it's available at lower price. Okay, if we can identify such material and use it for manufacturing the product, then certainly it would reduce the input. In this exercise, the job of purchase department is to identify the alternate substitute material. The process to identification does not involve any extra cost. So the productivity ratio will increase because of the decreased input by way of using cheaper raw materials to produce the same output. So on the example, so instead of using the same material, we refer to the decreased input as we use a cheaper product with the same output. Ibig sabihin nito is kahit nabaguhin natin yung material ng input natin for a lower price, yung output natin, yung tibay, yung basta lahat ng quality is same pa rin doon sa previous na previous na material na ginagamit natin. Okay, so for example is okay, so one example dyan is for example, wait lang, wala akong maisip na example. Example. Basta yun. Medyo na ako. So, we could just reduce. Okay, one example here is, for example, ito. When balik tayo sa construction. Okay, when we construct houses, kailangan natin ng yung mga supports, di ba? Minsan para kailangan natin ng mga wood to use the molds. Usually, ang ginagamit natin before na mga wood is yung mga mamahalin talagang wood. But then, so medyo tumataas yung price nito. Doon na natin nag-start gamitin yung another type of wood which is cheaper but does the same job, which is the cocoa lumber. Okay, so cocoa lumber is hindi masasabi nating cheaper siya kasi mas abundant lang talaga siya compared dun sa other types of wood. Kaya yun yung minsan na ginagawa nating alternative. So yun nga, di ba? As we all know, pag konti yung ibang supply, nagmamahal. So since abundant yung cocoa lumber, ang ginagamit na siya sa construction minsan. So same output pa rin, nagagawa niya pa rin yung same na trabaho ang kailangan niyang gawin. But then it's for a cheaper price. Okay? So medyo pupunta tayo masyado sa sa construction. Magbigay pa ako ng isang example. Mag-iisip ako. Next example is ayun. For example naman, sa systems development tayo. Okay. So you have one system. You made a software. And ginawa mo siya sa laptop, 'di ba? So yung specs ng laptop mo or computer mo or PC is Core i7, 8 gig of RAM, and 1 terabytes of hard drive, etc. So you have all those specifications, but the purpose of that device is only to run a specific program or one program. So parang it does the output, but we could redesign it to use a lower specification peripherals or um, materials, or what they call this, yeah, peripherals, to build and to make a system that is cheaper but does the same job. Okay, so for example, kung dati Core i7 ka, kahit mag-Core i3 ka na lang, or kahit nga yung mga Pentium or Celeron na processor, kung isang program lang naman na hindi ganun kakomplikado yung processes, it could run a single system. So, ganun yung mangyayari. We decrease the input or the cost of the hardware part to be able to run the same output, which is the main output is the system or the software. Okay, next. Less proportionate increase in output is more than that of the input. Consider the example of introducing a new product into the existing product mix of an organization. Let us assume that the existing facilities are not fully utilized and the R&D or the research and development wing of the company has identified a new product which has a very good market and which can be manufactured with the surplus facility of the organization. If the new product is taken up for production, it will lead to an increase in the revenue of the organization by the way of selling the new products in addition to the existing product mix, and an increase in the material cost and operation and maintenance cost of machineries because of producing new products. If we examine these two increases closely, the proportionate increase in the revenue will be more than the proportionate increase in the input cost. Hence, there will be a net increase in the productivity of ratio. So, we're talking about the proportionate increase here, or kumbaga kung pareha silang nag-increase, alin yung mas mataas yung in-increase. Okay, di ba? So for example, ang example dito is sa isang factory, they have this surpluses or may mga sobra silang gamit. And then ang ginawa ng R&D team is nag-isip sila ng pwedeng paggawan or paggamitan ng mga surplus or yung mga sobra. So ang nangyari is nag-generate sila ng panibagong kita. Although, kinailangan ulit nilang mag-generate ng panibagong gastos or cost or investments kasi mag-hire sila ng manpower, guguha sila ng machines para i-process yung surplus. Pero, ito yung sinasabing mas proportionate yung increase ng output. So, mas marami yung kikitain sa paggamit ng surplus, mas marami yung dagdag kaysa sa idadagdag dun sa cost. So parang it's a win situation pa rin kasi mas malaki pa rin yung income compared dun sa losses or sa investments. Okay, next. Next, proceed. When proportionate decrease in input is more than that of the output, okay, so yung kanina proportionate increase. Dito naman is proportionate yung decrease. So let us consider the converse of the previous example. Dropping the uneconomical product from the existing product mix. This will result in the following: a decrease in the revenue of organization, a decrease in material cost and operation and maintenance cost of machinery. If we closely examine these two decreases, we will see that the proportionate decrease in the input cost will be more than the proportionate decrease in the revenue. Hence, there will be a net increase in the productivity ratio. Okay, so dito naman, they will find something that would, kumaga, ika-cut off nila sa production na although mababawasan nga yung output natin or yung production or yung output cost, mas malaki naman yung mababawas sa input cost. Okay, so one example is for example, you are making you have a you call this? Electronic company, 'di ba? So gumagawa kayo ng, let's say, devices like motherboards, etc. Pero yung company nyo is, kumbaga, lahat ng piyesang kinakabit ay ginagawa nyo. So ang mangyayari is, pwedeng, if we're gonna adapt this concept, magka-cut off tayo ng production sa certain aspect and makukuha natin ito mas marami, same ano pa rin, may mababawas din sa output natin pero still um, kikita pa rin tayo. For example, you are, okay, sa electronics company nga, okay? So you are currently selling a let's say motherboard. Okay, so your motherboard has, you're making the motherboard, and other than that, you also make they call this, let's say, you also make the casing. Okay, so for example, you make the motherboard and you also make the chassis of the printer. So dalawa yung ginagawa ng company mo. Gumagawa kayo ng motherboard and then gumagawa kayo ng casing na ano. So pero medyo magkaano, 'di ba? Kasi yung isa electronics tapos medyo papasok ka sa metalworks. So ang gagawin mo, pwedeng mag-focus ka na lang doon sa paggawa mo ng ano, ng motherboard, and then yung resources mo sa metalworks is i-cut off mo. And then yung ibang pwede mo makakuha sa metalworks, ilatag mo doon sa paggawa ng board sa PCB. And then although mababawasan yung sales mo, mas malaki naman yung mababawas sa gastos mo. So win situation pa rin. Okay, next. Simultaneous increase in output and decrease in input. So ito, kung kanina sabay bumabawas, sabay dumadagdag, yung isa lang yung dumadagdag, isa lang yung bumabawas. Dito naman is sabay gumagalaw yung input tsaka output. Let us assume that there are advanced automated technologies like robots and automated guided vehicle system available in the market which can be employed in organization we are interested in. If we employ these modern tools, then there will be a drastic reduction to the operation cost. Initially, the cost of equipment would be very high, but in the long run, the reduction of the operating cost would break even the high initial investment and then more savings in the output and the input. There is an advanced facility that would help producing more products because they do not experience fatigue. The increased production will yield more revenue. An example, the long run, there's an increase in the revenue and decrease in the input. Hence, the productivity ratio will increase at faster rate. So, okay, so in this concept, you will have to add to, you will have to increase both output and the input. So, based from the example is, instead of using human for production, you will employ the modern robots or robotics, which is initially mas magastos talaga. Mag-invest ka ng malaki kasi modern technology yan. Pero at the same time, pag nag-employ ka ng robot, babawasin mo yung tatanggalin mo, magtatanggal ka ng mga tao, 'di ba? And at the same time pa rin naman, tataas yung input mo. Bakit? Yung robot, one-time payment lang 'yon, 'di ba? And then maintenance na lang. So, ang mangyayari pa is pwede siyang mag-work ng mas matagal. Hindi rin siya napapagod. 'Di ba? Unlike sa mga human, mas mapapagod sila, kailangan nila ng break time. Unlike yung robot, kaya niya mag-work, let's say, 10 hours straight. Walang pahinga, walang lunch break, walang kung anong break na ano mo dyan, walang snacks, walang etc. So, in this concept, nagdagdag ka ng input, but at the same time, magdadagdag din yung output mo. Okay, so yan yung mga concept mo. So, pwede naman sa computer. Let's say you're a graphic designer. Okay? So, you have this PC na matagal mo nang ginagamit. and medyo mabagal siya sa rendering, sa pag-publish ng mga gawa mo. And ang ginawa mo is naisipan mong i-upgrade yung PC mo. Nagdagdag ka ng RAM, nagdagdag ka ng um, video card or graphics card. So yes, you might invest a little bit higher, okay, or a little bit more, but yung magiging effect niya naman is on the side of the production or the output. So since nag-invest ka, nagdagdag ka ng processing power sa computer mo, mas mabilis ka nang mag-edit, mas mabilis ka nang mag-render, mas mabilis kang mag-publish, mas marami kang nagagawa sa isang araw. So again, it's a win situation pa rin. Okay. The next subtopic is the element of cost. So nasa ano tayo nasa decision making tayo. Okay? So cost concept of decision making. So ito na talaga yan, elements of cost. Okay? So cost can be broadly classified into variable cost and overhead cost. Variable cost varies with the volume of production, while overhead cost is fixed, irrespective or production volume. Okay, so so yung cost nga, 'di ba? Sinasabi nilang it's the variable cost or di yung pabago-bagong cost or overhead cost. Pag sinabi nating overhead, gastos 'yan. Okay, variable cost varies with the volume of production. So, pag mas marami kang output, mas marami kang production, mas malaki din yung variable cost mo. While overhead cost is fixed, irrespective of the production and volume. So, one example of that is, syempre, variable cost, nag-produce ka ng mas maraming item, syempre, mas maraming raw material din yung magagamit mo or pwedeng mangailangan ka rin ng mas maraming manpower. So, that's the variable cost. While yung overhead cost is ito yung mga fixed. Like, for example, let's say yung factory mo or yung office mo is inuupahan mo, yung upa, hindi nagbabago. Ano pa ba yung mga hindi nagbabago, yung mga fixed? Yung, basta yun. Okay? So, next. Variable cost can be further classified into direct material cost. Okay? Direct labor cost and direct expenses. The overhead cost can be classified into factory overhead, administration overhead, selling overhead, and distribution overhead. So, okay. So, administration overhead. So, yung mga bayad mo dun sa mga tao, yung mga bayad mo dun sa administration mo is already fixed. For example, I am the CEO or I am the owner. Ang kinikita ko araw-araw is already fixed. And it is always deducted into the total output. Okay? So, selling overhead. So, kahit gaano karaming order, so meron tayong tinatawag na selling overhead. Ito yung fixed price natin, fixed na retail, fixed na wholesale price or retail price. And the distribution overhead. So, laging fixed 'yon kasi yung distribution natin nandun na nakalista na 'yon. Hindi lumalayo yung mga pinagde-deliveran natin maliban na lang kung may bagong delivery area. Okay? So, direct material costs are those costs of materials that are used to produce the product. Direct labor cost is the amount of wages paid to the direct labor involved in the production activities. Direct expenses are the expenses that vary in relation to the production volume, other than the direct material cost and direct labor cost. Okay, so ito na yung mga variable cost. Diba? Daming cost, medyo magulo na siya. So, direct material cost, is the uses to produce the product. Okay, overhead cost is the aggregated of indirect material cost, indirect labor cost, indirect expenses. Administration overhead includes all the costs that incurred in administering the business. Selling overhead is total expenses that is incurred in promotional activities and and the expenses relating to sales, force, distribution overhead is the total cost of shipping the items from the factory site to the customer site. Okay, so isa-isa pala dito. It would be self-explanatory naman, di ba? Na administration is para to sa mga taong nagmamanage ng business. Your managers, those are fixed. Okay? Selling overhead, ito fixed din to. So kung meron commercial yung business mo, meron kang advertisement sa Facebook, may binabayaran ang certain amount. Okay, selling overhead, that's it. So distribution overhead, ito naman yung sa shipment na nasabi ko na. Excuse me. The selling price of a product is derived as shown below. Ito na yon. Ito na isa sa pinakamahalagang part. So kung may ginawa kang product, lahat ng cost na yon ay kailangan mong i-consider para makompute mo yung price per unit or selling price per unit. So from direct material cost plus direct labor cost plus direct expenses, which is equal to the prime cost. So prime cost, ito yung lahat ng mga direct costs or variable cost. Prime cost plus factory overhead is the factory cost. So ito na yung sa ng buong factory mo. Yung lang yan, yung sa production lang yan. Okay, so factory cost plus office and administrative overhead equals the cost of production. Cost of production plus opening finished stocks, closing finished stocks is cost of goods sold. So ito yung cost of production tapos yung Okay, proceed. Cost of goods sold, selling distribution overhead is equal to cost of sales. Cost of sales, hindi, minus pala yung kanina yung closing finished stocks. Okay. So, cost of sale plus profit equals sales. Sales divided by quantity sold, selling price per unit. Okay, so isa-isahin natin ha. Sa letter A, ito yung lahat ng nagagastos mong prime cost. Sa tao, materials or raw materials, and then yung iba pang gastusin sa production or sa workplace. Prime ko ay yung factory cost naman is kasama na dito yung mga fixed price, let's say yung upa, yung kung ano-ano pa, yung sa cleaning or what. Factory cost, hindi, yung cost of production is dito nakasama yung lahat ng tao. So lahat ng gastos mo sa loob ng factory mo, plus isasama mo na yung mga tao mo, yung mga pasahod mo sa managers mo, kung magkano yon. That's the cost of the whole production. So, cost of production plus opening finished stock. So, ito yung stock kung gaano karami. Yung yung kaka-start mo lang or kaka-finish mo lang total. Babawasan mo siya ng closing finished stock. So, meron siyang opening, merong closing. So, parang sa opening is ito yung start na mag-distribute, papunta ka na sa distribution. Okay? So, pagdating naman sa cost of sales, ito na yung cost of goods plus selling and distribution overhead. So, syempre, yung presyo ng goods mo, kasi tapos na yung tapos na, ilalabas mo na sa factory. So, ang idadagdag mo na dyan is the selling and distribution. Yung i-deliver mo na siya. So, kasali yun sa gastos mo. Ka ng mga vehicles, ng fuel, etc. So, cost of goods sold plus selling and distribution. Ay, di. Tama. Tapos na tayo sa selling and distribution. Cost of sales plus profit. So, di ba? So, yung cost of sales na yun yung lahat ng ginastos mo. Plus, dagdagan mo ng patubo mo kung ilan yung ipapatong mo doon. Which is equal now to the sales or kabuuang benta. Sales divided by quantity sold. So, yung kabuuang benta mo is i-divide mo siya sa kung gaano karaming produkto yung nagawa mo. Yun na yung selling price per unit natin. Okay? So, proceed. Next. Yun yung sa cost. Other cost, revenues. The following are the cost or revenues other than the cost which are presented in the previous section. Marginal cost, marginal revenue, sunk cost, opportunity cost. So ito medyo apat na slides na lang to. Okay, so pagdating sa marginal cost of a product is the cost of producing an additional unit of product. Let the cost of producing 20 units of product be, let's say, RS or rupees. This is Indian money, 10,000. And the cost of producing 21 units of the same product will be 10,045 rupees. Then the marginal cost of producing the 21st unit is 45 rupees. Okay. So, bakit parang kung i-divide mo, medyo ang layo, 'di ba? Kasi bakit 45 lang yung marginal cost? So, nandun na kasi computed na dun lahat or well accounted na yung previous na mga factors. For example, hindi ka naman magdadagdag ng tao or manpower kung isang item lang naman yung idadagdag mo or hindi naman ganun karaming item idadagdag mo. So, kumbaga parang ang cost lang na ginamit mo dito is or kinocompute is for the raw material. So, it's called the marginal. Ibig sabihin ng marginal is the difference in cost. So, yun nga, meron siyang 45 rupees na marginal cost. Next, the marginal revenue. So, marginal revenue of product is the incremental revenue of selling additional unit that of that product. Let the revenue of selling 20 units of a product be 15,000 pesos and the revenue of selling 21 units of the same product be 15,085. Then the marginal revenue of selling the 21st unit is 85 pesos. So, ito na naman again, this is now the difference kasi pag tinawag nating marginal, that's the difference in revenue. So, revenue is ito yung sales natin. So, ilan daw yung naidagdag nung nagbenta siya ng 21 pieces compared sa 20 pieces. So, 85 pesos. Okay. So, ito naman is the sunk cost. Sunk or lumubog na or gamit na or palang wala nang kwenta or hindi naman sa walang kwenta. Hindi mo na maibabalik kasi sunk na nga or lubog na. This is known as the past cost of an equipment or asset. Let us assume that an equipment has been purchased for it's supposed to be 1 million about 3 years back. If it is considered for replacement, then its present value is not 1 million. Instead, its present market value should be taken as present value of the equipment. For further analysis, so the purchase value of this equipment in the past is known as its sunk cost. The sunk cost should not be considered for any analysis done from now and onwards. So, okay. So, sunk cost. Ito yung mga gastos mo dati na hindi mo na dapat makonsider kasi wala na to eh. Kung nasa production ka, nabili mo na, hindi mo na ito maibabalik. So, in decision making, you should disregard this sunk cost. O, magbibigay ako ng isang example. You want to, let's say, you want to go to a concert. Okay? So, yung gusto mong concert is, di ba, nag-ipon ka ng ticket. Bibili ka na ng ticket, tapos out of stock na. Wala nang stock, wala nang tira sa'yo. So, ang ginawa mo is kasi naglaan ka na ng pera, gusto mong manood pa rin ng concert or gusto mong ilaan yung pera mo sa concert. So, bumili ka ng ibang ticket sa ibang concert. Iba naman yung performer doon at hindi mo gaanong gusto. Yung nauna talaga yung gustong-gusto mong performer. Okay? So, ang nangyari is bago mag-start yung let's say kasi sabihin natin sabay yung concert nila. Magkaibang place pero sabay. Bago yung araw ng concert nila, merong nag-offer sa'yo ng free ticket doon sa unang concert na gusto mo. Okay, so let's say ganon. So, meron kang panibagong opportunity. And yung expenses na ginamit mo dun sa unang ticket is already considered sunk cost. Kasi hindi mo na maibabalik yun eh. And still, you are given another opportunity na mapanood yung mas gusto mong concert. So, doon na papasok yung decision making. Okay? So, alin yung pipiliin mo? Doon sa ginastusan mo or doon sa mas gusto mo talaga pero libre? Okay? A lot of people, mas pipiliin nila yung ikalawang concert. Bakit? Doon nila nilagay yung pera nila. Doon sila nag-invest, doon napunta yung pera nila. But in business, it is already considered sunk cost. Wala na yun. Kumbaga, nagastos mo na yung pera. Kailangan mo na lang gumawa ng decision na mas makakapagpa-better sa'yo or mas mabuti or mas better compared dun sa isa. So, without considering the sunk cost, you must choose the free ticket. Why? Kasi yun yung mas gusto mo. Okay? So, same dito. So, nag-purchase sila ng equipment for 1 million peso. Kasi heavy equipment yan or what, o kung anong equipment. So, hindi na nila pwedeng i-consider yan. For example, mag-change sila ng business. Let's say from construction, lilipat sila sa tawag dito. Let's say from construction, lilipat sila into ano bang pwedeng basta yung hindi mo na magagamit yung yung what do you call this? Previous na purchases. Yun yung tinatawag dating sunk cost. Kahit anong gawin mo, hindi mo na dapat isipin yung sunk cost kasi wala na yan. Makakasira pa siya ng decision mo. Okay? Next is the opportunity cost. In practice, if alternative X is selected from a set of competing alternatives X and Y, then the corresponding investment in the selected alternative is not available for any other purpose. If the same money is invested in some other alternative Y, it may be fetch some return. Since the money invested in the selected alternative X, one has to forgo the return from one alternative, etc. Okay, so ganito yan. Opportunity cost. Okay, so ganito yan. One example is you are employed. Okay, so magtatrabaho ka. Meron kang buwanang sahod. Okay, so ang mangyayari is naisipan mong magtayo na lang ng sarili mong business or mag-freelance. Okay? So, in that, you have the opportunity. You have a new opportunity na alam mong mas kikita ka doon. Pero, dito na papasok yung opportunity cost. The cost or the money or the income na mawawala sa'yo pag sinunod mo yung opportunity na yun. So, ano mawawala sa'yo? Yung monthly salary mo. Okay? So, mawawalan ka na ng monthly salary and because of that, yun yung kapalit ng opportunity which is the business. Sabi dito, so the opportunity cost of an alternative is the return that will be forgone by not investing the same money in another alternative. Okay? So, yun. So, by choosing another alternative, yung isang alternative na dati mong pinilis, mawawala na siya. Okay? So, that's the end. So, ito yung in summary. Ito yung mga iba-ibang factors or ilan sa mga factors affecting decision making. Okay, yung iba-ibang cost, yung efficiency ng mga materials, etc. Okay, so diyan ko muna tatapusin. See you next meeting.